Good morning, it's Dr. Val here. We are starting a new thing I'm calling Coffee Chats, and I have my coffee, and I'm really excited about what I'm going to talk about today, and that is something that I think is really fundamental to anybody who is trying to be healthier, who is trying to get healthy, and it's a process, I understand that. But I'm going to do a little book review on what I think everybody needs to read. This is a book, and I'm sorry it's backwards, but it is called Wheat Belly. It's by Dr. William Davis, Bill Davis. He's written several books, but this came out in 2011, and it was really, really shook things up in a lot of ways. It goes through all the studies that talk about how wheat, its direct effect on our bodies, and that was shortly after the time the whole gluten-free thing, which I really thought was kind of a fad thing. Oh, it's just the next fad thing. Everybody's trying to be gluten-free, gluten-free. But this book talks about the science in how we have changed and manipulated wheat over the last 100 years. So I'm going to say this. Wheat, this is a big argument that I get, especially from people who read the Bible. Christians will say, but it's this is a God food. Hello, the bread of life. It's talked about, it's healthy because it's talked about in the Bible. Well, yes. Back in the days that the Bible was written, wheat was not what it is today. We have so manipulated wheat through thousands and thousands of hybridizations, and then we started actually inserting genes, which is genetically modifying it. But even the hybridizations before, we had so rearranged things to get traits that we wanted and crossed this and crossed that. At such a high rate, we have drastically changed the DNA of wheat. And so what I tell people today is that it is not a God food. It is unrecognizable from what it used to be 100 or 2,000 years ago. So, and his book does a pretty good job of explaining that while not getting too technical. It goes through the science of how we have so changed the genetics of wheat without really knowing any consequences that it might have on our human bodies. For example, and this was not in his book, but I read it somewhere else, was that through a number of genetic changes, the amylopectin A percentage, which is the protein which your saliva and the acid in your stomach take amylopectin A and they convert it to through amylase in your saliva, start breaking that down, and it's what raises your blood sugar from that. And that amylopectin A percentage rate increased fourfold, I think, through and I don't remember which series of alterations that they made in the genes. But that's just one example. We didn't really know what it did to men, but we're learning the science of it now, and that book definitely goes through that. So it's not a God food anymore. We have so changed it that, and that's worldwide. There are thousands of varieties of wheat out there today, and none of them are even close to what they were 200 years ago. So, for example, wheat, a glycemic index score is any food, anything that you put in your mouth, how much it raises your blood sugar on a scale. Wheat has a higher glycemic index than table sugar. If you eat 2 slices of whole wheat bread, and it doesn't matter, wheat or white, there's very little difference. It raises your blood sugar more than eating 2 tablespoons of straight sugar. It's one of the highest glycemic index products of any processed foods that is out there that we make. It has a glycemic index of 72. Table sugar has a glycemic index of 59. A Snickers bar has a glycemic index of 48. So, I mean, rather than give your your kid a piece of toast in the morning, just give them a candy bar. It's better for their sugar. Think about it. Two slices of bread raise your sugar higher than if you drink a 1 can of a sugar drink, although, straight Coke, anything that actually still has sugar in it and not the artificial stuff, it raises your blood sugar higher than that, 2 slices of bread. So something to think about. What that high sugar spike does when you eat bread with every meal and every snack, the crackers, the sandwich, the toast, the rolls, the pasta, every time you eat that, it spikes your blood sugar up, which the body can't cope with that. It's not safe to have your sugar that high. So the body has to pull it out of the blood. So what it does is it pumps out a huge amount of insulin from your pancreas. Insulin goes out, grabs a sugar, and insulin is like a key that helps the sugar to get from the bloodstream through the door into a fat cell to store it. Insulin is what allows the sugar to come out of the blood and into the fat cell. But unfortunately, when your body pumps out a whole lot of insulin, guess what happens? It's very effective. Your blood sugar then drops about 2 hours after the fact, and now that your blood sugar is low, you feel hungry again. And so you go through these cycles of high and low blood sugars. And this is anybody. I'm not talking about diabetics. I'm saying the roller coaster that we put our bodies through every single day, your body can compensate for it, but it's still doing this. Your blood sugar is just up and down and up and down. And it pumps out a huge amount of insulin. That insulin is out in the body longer than the sugar is. It pulls out the sugar. There's a lot of insulin floating around. And guess what? In a few hours, that partly drives you to feel hungry again because your body's like, oh my word, now I have too much insulin. I need some more sugar. So you go and you grab something and you munch on it. And that roller coaster effect of what your body is doing is horrible for your long-term health. It ages cells faster. That high-low blood sugar creates chaos, really, in the body. But it does age cells faster. One of the really key things that high-low spikes of insulin and sugar, which are in our society and in our culture, which are pushed largely by wheat because it is such a huge sugar spiker, one of the biggest things that triggers is storage, not just of general fat, but of visceral fat. Visceral fat is different than fat that you have in your extremities, in your arms and legs. Visceral fat is a specific type of fat, and it is largely found around your midsection, your belly. That central obesity, our doctors talk about as a mark of numerous health issues. They talk about truncal obesity or central obesity. It's when you're carrying your weight largely in your trunk. It's not talking about arms and legs. That type of fat is actually far more dangerous than other kinds of fat. That fat, visceral fat in particular, actually directly releases inflammatory markers into the bloodstream. It pushes up all kinds of inflammatory markers. It actually releases it into the bloodstream. So you have higher amounts of inflammatory markers that are traveling all over the body from that, which has some downstream effects, and we won't get into that now. But just to show that it's a very big characteristic. The other thing that visceral fat does that other fat doesn't do is it releases high amounts of estrogen. Actually releases high amounts of estrogen in the way it stores it and pumps it out into the system. Estrogen is a fat soluble hormone, meaning it, not fat soluble, but it is actually stored in fat. But visceral fat in particular tends to actually store it and release it. And that has implications for both men and women. So with men, higher amounts of estrogen, you get man boobs. Seriously. And you see that beer belly gut that many, many men struggle with is not actually a beer belly, it's a wheat belly. And that high amount of belly fat is releasing more amounts of estrogen, and you get what goes right along with it is man boobs. In women, the higher amounts of estrogen are leading to a higher risk of breast cancer. That has been studied in numerous populations, but now specifically we're linking it to visceral fat. High amounts of visceral fat means they are at higher risk, a fourfold higher risk of breast cancer. So literally your bread is putting you at risk for breast cancer. And that actually goes the same in men. It's increasing men's rates of breast cancer as well. So that's just another thing. There are, well, I won't go any farther into that. Needless to say, that cycle is really, really bad for your health. And specifically in the gut. This is a really important characteristic, and I'm just going to touch on this, and then I'm going to encourage everybody to go read this book, because I'm hoping that this whets your appetite to go pick it up. I think this is fundamental to understanding some things, perhaps about your body. But so in the gut, the protein from gluten, one of the proteins, actually triggers the release of zonulin. Zonulin in your intestinal lining. Actually, there's a balance there of cell repair and cell building, as there is in every single tissue. But in the gut, zonulin is responsible for taking apart the tight junctions in the gut. The tight junctions are the links in between the cells of the lining of the gut that basically keep everything out, except what your body wants to absorb through the cells as things are traveling through the intestine. They're called tight junctions because they're supposed to be tight. They are not supposed to let a single molecule of anything into the bloodstream. When those are disrupted, you get particles being just freely going through a sieve into the bloodstream that are not supposed to be in the bloodstream. That is how, in celiac disease, they measure the amounts of antibodies that you have to wheat and to other molecules in the gut lining. You're not supposed to have antibodies there. But the reason that you get antibodies floating around in your blood of your immune system going, wait, this isn't natural, this isn't me, is that you have lost that integrity of the tight junctions. So now you have a sieve of things just coming into the bloodstream, and your immune system goes, wait, this isn't supposed to be here, and it creates an immune response. In celiac disease, which we say, well, that's your body is making antibodies to your gut tissue, your gut lining, those cells that are leaking in parts that aren't supposed to be there, as well as wheat. Well, how it all got there to begin with is the wheat is literally telling the body to tear apart the tight junctions, and so it's just all pouring in. That leads to not just wheat response of the immune system, but the immune system is now attacking everything that is going through your gut, which means it's a cause of food allergies, things that you shouldn't be allergic to. I mean, people are allergic to salt and pepper and parsley and things that you are not supposed to be allergic to. How did it get there? How is your immune system suddenly attacking something that's in your gut? It's not. It's because you have leaky gut. That is essentially what leaky gut is the gut has gone from a solid tube that is only selectively to pull out nutrients through the cells to a sieve. And everything is just pouring into the bloodstream, particles of things, big particles of things, that the body goes, wait, this isn't supposed to be happening. And you end up with food particles that are actually being absorbed, and the body creates a response to it, and it leads to more and more food allergies. If you have usually food allergies, that is the cause, is that you've got leaky gut. Wheat is directly contributing to that. So that is just one thing that just in the gut that it's doing. It affects the brain. It directly affects your cholesterol, triglycerides and LDL specifically. The skin, there's a number of studies of very direct effects between wheat and what it is doing, and the skin. And so I would say this: if you are like, well, okay, I love wheat. I can't go a day without eating my toast and my bread, and I can't walk past a cookie without grabbing it. Well, let me tell you, it's not entirely your fault. Wheat, the gluten in wheat, once it's acted upon by your digestive enzymes, what is left, the polypeptide, actually crosses the blood-brain barrier, and that gluten protein component binds to morphine receptors. Okay, this is huge. What this means is that literally bread is crack. Okay? Every time you eat bread, it is actually stimulating in your brain a euphoric satisfaction, the same that you would get with drugs. That morphine receptor, which you can block with a drug called naloxone. They've done studies where they took people and they gave them, all the bread they wanted. In one group, they gave them naloxone, which blocks that morphine receptor. People quit eating bread because they didn't get that, oh, it's so good feeling from it. People naturally started eating less bread, and they lost weight just because they gave them naloxone, because it didn't have that literal hit on your brain. So it's not your fault that you are, oh, it's just a weakness, I can't give it up, I can't, No, literally, it's like an addiction. It's not all your fault. It's not that you are just weak, that you can't give it up. There is literally, chemically, your brain thinks it's crack, okay? So, those are the kind of things that I had no idea before I started looking into this, how potent that molecule is, and it wasn't like this, a couple hundred years ago. It wasn't like this 2,000 years ago. So, wheat today is just not a God food. So, what's the alternative? First of all, you don't have to never eat bread again, never eat cookies again, never eat pasta again. Yesterday, I made chocolate chip cookies with my son. Now, did it have wheat in it? No. Did it have white refined sugar in it? No. It used almond flour and coconut flour. The nut flours have a much lower glycemic index, not going to raise your sugar as much, and they don't have the inflammatory components that go along with wheat. That is called paleo. If you were looking for recipes, look for paleo recipes, because that means it's grain-free. The reason I say that instead of gluten-free recipes, which are big, the gluten-free, unfortunately, gluten-free recipes or products that you find out there usually substitute the wheat with things like potato starch, tapioca starch, rice flour, arrowroot, all the things that they use to switch out in place of wheat. Well, it tastes okay, and some of it is, the consistency is okay. Gluten-free, those particular starches and flours have an even higher, they are some of the only things that have a higher glycemic index than regular wheat. So while you're not getting the inflammatory triggers and everything that goes along with the wheat, you are getting an even higher sugar spike from gluten-free products. Gluten-free bread typically has a glycemic index somewhere in the 80s, I think. It's 79 or 82. And so you still get the sugar and the insulin spike and all that that does to wreck your metabolism. So do I eat gluten-free products? Yeah, once in a while. We go out, I'll have gluten-free sandwiches. There's lots of restaurants that have gluten-free menus now. Pasta, pizza, sandwiches, you can have it all and have it be gluten-free. So if we're going out to eat and that is an option, I might, I do that occasionally or buy gluten-free. But those sugar spikes have huge damaging effects in other ways. So if you're just substituting one for the other, you're going to have some benefit, but you might have a trade-off because that also, it wrecks your immune system, it wrecks your metabolism. It still is leading to that visceral fat, which has big effects on inflammatory markers and all of that downstream effect. So gluten-free is not the answer. It's better than regular wheat. I would say in moderation it's better. But a much better option is paleo recipes. And there are options out there. So I've already gone too long. I could talk about this book a lot. I'm actually going to be writing out a summation, I guess would be a better word, of the points that he makes in this book. And it's just going to be a one-page, what does wheat do to your brain? What does it do to this part of your body? What does it do in your gut? What does it do to your hormones? What does it do, just kind of bullet point style. So that you can have something to hand out to people because, but I would encourage everyone to read that book for themselves. It's not too technical, and it's by Dr. William Davis. And he does have some recipes in there. A caution on the sweeteners that he used. When this book came out, Splenda was still fairly new and didn't have a whole lot of data. Everybody thought it was great. So he has that listed in the book as an alternative sweetener, as well as Truvia. Both of those have been shown to be really, really bad for you. So sweeteners, stick to maple syrup, as unprocessed as you can find it, raw honey, coconut sugar or coconut crystals, and stevia. Those are the only sweeteners that I use, and you can use those for baking as well. So I hope this has been helpful. Everybody should go out and read this book, and I hope more than anything that it has triggered some questions in your mind, because in my journey, I never want to stop digging for the truth. And this is boo-hooed by the media. It's boo-hooed by the food industry. Oh, there's nothing dangerous about food, about wheat. Oh, it's good for you. They push the whole wheat diet. In the last 40 years, that's not working out so well. To eat more whole grains. You want to do exactly the opposite and stay away from grain. But that's a quest for truth, to keep digging. And so I hope everyone goes and reads this book as a quest for, wait a minute, I think we've been duped about something here. So read the book, and I will see you guys next week, same time, and have a great day. Bye.